Alrighty. Oh, disappointing that you don't have artillery, but at least... Oh man, this is actually a pretty rough matchup for you because they've got these mid-tier light tanks, which are potentially a problem. The T-54E1 is not as much of a problem as the Batcat or the BTA. So typically speaking, I'll still go up to spot this hill area here, but you basically have to be in a go position. Because there's no artillery, you can basically play this outside ridge here as you go up, which will spot anybody who's basically stray out here, who doesn't basically hug that line side, and you'll get some idea of what's going on up there. But if you do go hill, you need to be careful. If you don't go hill, which it doesn't look like you can go hill, like you'll see a lot of people do this little loop right here. I don't really feel like that's super productive. Like if you're gonna spot this field area, it's actually better to come around through this side, especially when there's no artillery, because you can basically hide over here. It's too easy where if their light tank or medium tank drove a little bit forward there for you to get shot. So if you start that, you can do that exact same run that you did, but do it from this side, you'll be a lot safer. And then the other thing that you can do, so you're playing through this area, which is fine. What you can do is you come up to this area right here. Again, especially when there's no artillery, you're not really worried about it. You don't want to sit in this area right there, though. It's really easy to get sort of stuck in there. Because what you want to do is you want to just spot into there. And again, so you have to understand the firing lanes here. So one of the interesting things about this is that there's this area here where you can get shot through, but once you're up over here, you're actually relatively safe, unless these guys literally want to drive over the top of that. So you're actually safer over on this side where you were than over on this side where you currently are, because this is a firing lane through here. So you need to be careful of that. You're also not really spotting these guys in the back right now, which is sort of the issue here. Lol. Track damage, best damage. And then, so again, you're pushing your heavies up here, which is actually fantastic, but you haven't done anything to help out your team, really, in terms of getting them any intel. And that's sort of the problem. Again, like I said, going through here isn't necessarily bad. You didn't waste that much time, but you need to come up here to spot over there, especially when there's no artillery. If there is artillery, particularly a lot of artillery, that's fine. You don't necessarily need to roll that, although I still would in a light tank, just because I have enough speed that I'm not really afraid of any artillery. And then playing this side now is pretty weak. Like, you're not really doing anything. At the very least, you should be up there, because then you can at least spot potentially over there. Like, your STA is not really doing a whole lot. Unfortunately, your E5 took this bottom ground here, which isn't going to be necessarily very helpful for you. And then these guys in the base are always sacrificial lambs, so you don't really have to worry about that. Not entirely sure what you're doing. You're just basically kind of hanging out in the back. You're not doing really anything useful at all in terms of watching one side or the other, or trying to push anything. And then now it's going to be very predictable if you hide in those bushes, which is... well, I'm not entirely sure. You keep driving through these lanes where people can spot and shoot you, and I don't think that that's necessarily the best thing for you to do. See where that STA is? That's actually technically a good position. I wouldn't put an STA there. But you want to play up along this ridge area right there. Unfortunately, your guys are sitting back on the hill, which is not so good. That is unfortunate. And again, that's not necessarily a good position to put a T-54E1, but them's the breaks. This Batchat's Billy Goatin down there. You're not really paying attention to him, though. He is the one guy that you could shoot, though. Again, this is why you need to sort of pay attention. The bat chat's not really going to go anywhere or do anything useful. But again, so this area right here is not very useful in this mid-game that you're playing. Especially since you're slowly losing the hill. Oh man, you get a shot on that T-26E5. You got that. You can shoot him from down here too if you wanted. And you don't need to trace him. There you go. Brilliant. When you're waiting for the reload, just aim in front of him. And just wait for that reload, because you got a long ways to go there. And then so at this point, I would actually probably try to help your guys on the hill, although it looks like they're going to do decently. And then again, once you own the hill, that's when you play over here, because you can light these guys very easily, and your guys can get shots off of the hill. But again, you spent a lot of this game kind of just hanging out. Although at least you're in a somewhat relevant position now, because at least you're covering them from preventing them from crossing here. The bad news is that your E5 is still on that lower plateau, which is going to be issues. You're playing this like it has got an awesome gun, and you have to remember that it does not, really. The JT that's in the base is like, I don't have a shot. It's like, yeah, we know. You will have shots on that guy. I don't know why people go in there. He was giving you like the front wheel. I'm not entirely sure where you should be shooting there. Don't worry about him. Again, those guys that move through that underneath area, they're not going to do anything super useful, so... That's not a really good angle that you're shooting at. You want to shoot... You can... I can't do it now because you're not actually zoomed in on. Once you zoom in here. So, because this is his front right drive wheel right here, right? And this is his front left drive wheel. And he's got a curved hull here. Shooting at this drive wheel isn't gonna, I mean, it'll do damage if you get the right ricochet. But if you shoot a little bit more over here, you can actually shoot through that lower hull. Or see how he's now giving you enough side that you can shoot through that drive wheel and it will damage him. But he's also giving you side turret. So, just aim accordingly. And then see how he turned again. So, again, it's shoot him in the turret or in that lower glacis. In this case, shoot him in the turret. There you go. That's a nice shot. And then now, so from the position you're in now is fine to deal damage. Now is time. You know, you're using your gun, you're being effective in using it. And that's really what you want to be able to do. And then now, what you want to be able to... Oh man, why did everybody go on this low ground? So now what you want to be able to do is you want to get over here so you can light these guys. You don't really have a whole lot on the hill left. Their Tiger 2 is pushing through this side. Eventually your JT is kind of sitting out in the open, which is not good. He's going to die eventually. Again, you don't really need to worry about sniping these guys. You actually need to get on your horse to clear this out. Because once those guys get through on the other side, you're going to have significant other issues here. So you need to make this happen here. And your position is becoming increasingly dangerous. So again, you want to be able to light, like this IS-7 is down here. You guys need to clear out through this area. You're not being useful enough to your team at this point. Like that IS-7 is doing a better job scouting than you are. Like, you're better off taking advantage of his gun and your spotting than his spotting and your gun. I'm kind of surprised at damage, but alright. Again, if you get a nice bounce through that wheel well, then you'll be fine. Otherwise, this is not a very good angle to shoot this guy from. Even with APCR, at this distance, you're not going to quite have the pen that you need to damage this guy. Right. And in the meantime, things of significance are happening on this end, especially since you're now about to lose control on the hill. Lol. But APCR arced down and landed on his lower glacius. Take it. Yeah, I mean, this is gonna end up falling under the category just a little bit too snipey. Like, everybody's doing your job for you. And you're like sitting here, oh man, getting all these shots, but like nobody's afraid of your gun. And that's sort of the problem. We're gonna speed this up because it's gonna get a little, this is gonna get a little boring soon. So again, you potentially have chances to push around through here. You have chances to light for your guys. These guys can potentially get shots if you move someplace that's relevant. At this point, pushing the hill is not really going to be that useful. You've got more open area on this side. You're not really going to be able to challenge that leopard efficiently. If he had lower health, then potentially that's a problem. But the problem is that you're not really spending any time doing any spotting here. Like, for some reason you think that you can take this PTA 1v1. That's not really the case. And then now is fine. Like, if the PTA is going to give this up to you, then that's fine. Let him. But you still need to be able to light some duders here if you can. You still have the superior view range and the superior... Unfortunately, your field guys are now dead. You can use these bushes up here to spot. It's actually pretty easy. Lols. That was a good play. And let your spot drop. Or don't let your spot drop. That was a nice shot. No, don't go back to that well, my man. Don't go back to that well. Oh, you're not a medium tank. Again, you want to utilize the strengths of your tank. The strength of the tank is not the gun. The strength of the tank is the fact that you have camo on the move, etc., etc., etc. Now, unfortunately, it's a little bit late in the day for you to be doing some scouting. This is what your team needed you to do a couple of minutes ago when you still had guys on the hill. Your IS-7s were still, reasonably full health. Alright, so we'll pause it here because I don't know when that guy's gonna die. So basically, there's a number. Oh, I know this is gonna draw out actually. So basically, there's a number of issues. One, again, you made this loop through the field, which isn't necessarily bad, but I wouldn't take the course that you went. Go on this side of the building when there's. Oh, damn it! I wasn't watching the time. Damn it. Let me restart that real quick. Or maybe it won't restart. Oh, there we go. All right. So anyways, so when you make this loop over here, don't go around this building this way. You could have done the exact same thing coming down over here. You've been much safer, and then just drop off over here once you get lit, right? And you'll be much safer in doing that. And then you came up here. You came up here, which is fine. Again, it didn't seem like you knew how to play this area at all. You should practice playing in over here. It's actually really useful for lighting these guys on the back line, especially since we know that eventually they sent a bunch of their heavies up there. But that's a good way to get intel, and B, get your team some free damage, particularly when there's artillery. Again, remember that there are firing lanes through right here, so you need to be careful. And then unfortunately you proceeded to spend most of your match kind of camped back here behind most of your team, which isn't really useful. You can make the argument that once the hill engagement started, you didn't really have a lot of places to push. Okay, and I get that. But again, once that sort of field area was clear, you had options to do things. You had plenty of options to do stuff. And at any point in the game where you had an option where I was like, oh yeah, you can move forward here and spot for your team, like when your IS-7 was driving through here and the other IS-7 was up here, you had opportunities to spot for those guys, but you allowed them to spot for you. And again, that's backwards thinking that you'll see out of a lot of light tanks, where they'll try to make use of their guns, right? And your gun does, should show me, I think it was like 250 damage, right? 250 damage, that's not quite as scary as the IS-7 gun. So you want to let the big guns do their work and the little guns do their work, right? You're Arsenio Hall in this scenario, and the IS-7 is Eddie Murphy. So if you got that reference, more power to you. So anyways, I just felt like there were opportunities for you to spot, and you just didn't. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll win, but you need to recognize those opportunities. Like particularly once you get the hill, it's very easy for you to be where that IS-7 is at, light these guys over here from a fairly protected areas, and just have the IS-7s raining down on them, and all of your other tanks. It just felt like you played this game a little bit too passively. You allowed your team to advance in front of you without you, in places where you could have made a difference. And that ended up hurting you more than anything else. You did do a lot of damage, which is fantastic in a sense, but didn't win the game, and I think that's the takeaway that we should have. It's, you got to play to the strengths of your tank, and I don't really felt like you played to the strengths of the tank. You did use the gun effectively, which is, I mean, it's admirable in a sense. It's just not necessarily. I think this is ultimately going to be the problem when people get to the tier 10 lights, depending on how they decide to balance them, is that they're going to overplay the weaknesses of the tank. You know, it's kind of like playing your heavy tank for speed, or, you know, taking your medium tanks into alleys and duking it out against heavies. You want to find situations where you can utilize the advantages of the tank, and particularly on a map like Malinovka, there's a lot of open ground. You can abuse the fact that you've got better view range, you've got better camo than everybody else, and use that to your advantage, particularly while you still have guns alive. I mean, you had plenty of guns, like particularly when your guys started pushing through that field area, you could have been the guy lighting for them and making it easier for them to shoot those guys in that sort of C5 area. But GG, nice try. Alright, so next we'll look at Dincus's mouse game. So many mousei. Oh, that was a very loud tick. Oh, I see. For some reason the tick started before the match started. Again, you actually have a really good comp for this, so you guys want to play reasonably aggressive through here. You want to see what their team is doing. You'll be pretty sheltered from artillery, so you don't need to worry about that. So you're just looking to trade as efficiently as possible while moving through here. It's actually pretty good because you've got basically all super heavies. You can basically set up one guy on this side, one guy on this side, and one guy on this side. And then these two guys get some level of overlap, and then once you can establish through here, you bring this guy around here or something like that. You gotta see how it goes. You want to be careful crossing across right here because you can get shot, as I've proven to you guys many times. One of the reasons why I always shoot those doors down. Super heavy games must also be played in 2-speed. And so we've talked about this before in the stream, but it bears repeating. Like, you see where this T49 is, you'll see a lot of guys set up here. This is not the proper place to set up. What you actually want to do is you want to set up over here by this little bit of rubble where your reticle is to get shots in there, and that's the reason why I shoot down those doors. You can have one AP shell that can knock down both of those doors. This area right here is very vulnerable to counterfire and artillery fire. This place, by comparison, is virtually safe and allows you a hull down. So you never want to be where this guy is at, just for future reference. And again, you're looking at what their team is doing. See how that IS-7 is over there, that PZ-7 is in this lane. So you're getting some intel about what's going on. This 1390 is here, which is interesting. So you guys can actually be reasonably aggressive through here. Your E100 is already moved forward, which is fantastic, except for the fact that the mouse eye are slightly slower. Your 1390 is now down, which is a little bit of a problem. So you need to move forward just to help out your boy here, but otherwise you don't really need to worry too much. Lol. Just push it. You can just push it now. There we go. That's what we're talking about. Just bully it. Just bully it. You don't really need APCR for the TV7 heavy. You'd actually probably rather concentrate on getting these guys down. But you're fine where you're at. You don't necessarily need to creep forward here. That 5120 is slow playing it. Just shoot his track. So a lot of times I'll notice this in people. They don't like tracking people. Tracking is extremely useful in this game. And then now's when you need to be a little bit careful because you can actually get artillery shots through that window right there. Your team, they could be a little bit more aggressive on that side, but let's see what they have. That was just a bad trade by you. Like, that wasn't entirely necessary. So you don't want to sit in that window. You can move forward just a little bit and you'll be fine. Oh, the ram death. No, shoot the PZ4 and... Oh, you did it backwards. Shoot the PZ7 and ram the 5120. Not ram the 50... I'm sorry, not shoot the 5120 and ram the PZ7. Come on, man. Get with the program. Thanks for the donation, Penetrate. Anyway, so then now you guys are doing the right thing, which is basically going back. I wouldn't worry too much. That was a nice shot. Again, you probably don't need APCR at this point. So what you want to be able to do is play through this area right here. Because that's going to give you the most shelter from artillery. Their artillery can shift around to that south, which will give you problems. Potentially. But you want to play up into this, one guy up into here. You have a shot in that I-7. And you want to be a little bit aggressive here. Be a little bit aggressive here. Man, you guys are getting some funky shots off. Now, they're going to have some guys back here, but you're not really super worried about that. Once you get into here, you want to push that just to clear it. And the good news is that you guys are mostly working together. You have a trailing mouse, which is fine. Take your time, get your shot. Fortunately, your E100 really needed to hit that shot, but you don't need to push this guy here. Again, pushing out into here is what sort of makes you vulnerable. And then you just want to push back through here. You're not really worried about this at this point. You want to push through this side here. And again, it's all about being already safe. See where this E100 is at? That's not a very good position. What you want is you want to come around through here. Don't worry about these guys in this field. Those guys are going to die. What you want to do is you want to clear this out quickly. And again, you're out in the open. You want to be up on this wall right here. There's no reason for you to be this. I would still worry about this guy. Your E100 is not in a good spot right now. No, help out your boy! And again, you don't need to push across here. You would rather get safe at this point. And then now's where things will get difficult, because they do have the light tank. And then so what you want to do is somewhat paradoxically split up. So this is what I would do, especially if I'm in a platoon. So what I would do is I would send 2 guys around this way, right? And I would send 1 guy, probably the guy with the most health, around this way. You don't necessarily need to cluster because they can always shift away from you, but you basically need to sweep out here to basically push their artillery in one direction, and then you can move towards the cab. Again, this merits 2x speed. And so at this point, moving through here is not necessarily useful. I think you guys are clustering a little bit too much. So remember, the reason why you cluster if there's tanks that can overwhelm you. Like if they've got 4 tanks and you've got 2 tanks, you'll want to cluster a little bit more. But if you run into any one of these tanks, any 2 of these tanks at once, not really that concerned. They're not really going to outduel you. That's not what their strength is, right? If they're just like, this T-49 is like, oh, I got this, I'm just going to go in and circle these mouses. No, that's not gonna happen, particularly on this particular terrain. That's not going to happen. So in this particular case, you actually want to split up a little bit more than you guys are, because when you're traveling in a cluster like this, that's where they have the advantage, because all they got to do is sit at a distance and spot, right? There's no threat, there's no net. It's just you guys moving in a cluster in one direction. All they have to do is just not be directly in the path of that, and they're fine. But if you split up a little bit, then you start to sweep, right? And that's what takes away their strength. So you need to sweep out through this side a little bit more. So they have 1 on the north right there and 1 right there. And then now what you need to do, you still need to sweep. I would come around through here and come up towards that guy. You could even cross through here, come around that guy. But you do need to go towards that guy. Again, remember, they're more mobile than you, which is why you want to sweep through an area. So you actually want to cut in and then sweep. Good for them. I don't know if I was them that I necessarily would have called that unless they had you on lockdown, which is to say they knew where you were at, because it's too easy for you to counter that by coming around through this side. And if you're on this side to sweep the cap, then you're going to own them. What you don't want to have to do is you don't want to have to come around this north side to sweep the cap. Well, the good news is that you know where they are. Unfortunately, not gonna end well. What you gonna do? Anyways, so I thought you guys did okay over on this side. I thought that you could have played it a little bit more efficiently. Once you pushed in here, I thought you were fine. I thought you guys could have played it a little bit more efficiently coming across this way. And then on this way back here, again, you need to prioritize your positioning a little bit better coming back towards here. Be up on this wall right here. Just make sure that you can clear off the cap. Your E100 took a bad path to the cap. All he had to do was come around on this same side. There's nowhere really for those guys to run. And then at this point, you know, at the end of the game, I'm kind of surprised that they actually did that, because I felt like that would have been very easily countered, because they didn't know where you were at. So you could have come back through here, and then that entire gambit would have failed. It's different if they had spotted you the whole time and they knew that you were going north, and once they see you going north, then they can run that gambit. But that's not a solid play by them without knowing exactly where you are, and they just did not have that kind of intel. I don't feel like that their team played it super efficiently, but your team obviously didn't do a whole lot as well. Again, what I really feel that you need to do, particularly when you're in slower tanks, is send one guy, right, to sweep out through here. You basically just want to flush them in a direction while you bring, you know, it's the rope-a-dope. You send one guy in this direction, flush them this way, and you have two guys over here to hammer them as they come out on the other side. But you guys allowed them to basically move about in this field side as however they wanted, and that ended up being more of a problem than a help. Didn't help that your guys ended up dying down here. Their team played it, I mean, again, I don't want to say lucky, but it didn't feel like they had enough intel. They just happened to move their tanks in the right area at the end. It would be different if that light tank was doing, you know, because you guys were all moving through that middle. It would have been different if that light tank was over here, just basically keeping you guys lit as you move through there the whole time, because that could have had you on lockdown. But that wasn't really the case. He wasn't out there. He just happened to come around on the back and get a shot over here once these guys got lit on that side. So I don't necessarily feel like that was planned per se, but it did work out for them, so more power to them. Alright, so we look at the stats. Your platoon did pretty well, so that's good. Unfortunately, you didn't get a whole lot out of the rest of your team, but that'll happen. Again, I really feel like if you guys had been just a little bit more efficient in terms of breaking through the west side, that would have been nice. I feel like you guys were aggressive enough, but like once you got it down to, okay, it's slow tanks against fast tanks, I feel like you didn't really know how to play that. And that was sort of the problem. And it's opposite. It's interesting because it's the opposite problem what we see in a lot of these replays. Like if you watch a lot of the recent replay reviews, a lot of times I'm talking about people, I'm commenting on these faster tanks that are just basically trying to brawl it out, when I'm saying, okay, you need to get some distance and play the distance game at this point, particularly in the late game. But again, this is from that counter side. If you're the heavy tank in that equation, you want to figure out some way, how do I close the gap? You know, how do I push them out in a direction towards my friends, or how do I get them in an area, like let's say it's 1v1, how do I get them into an area where I can, you know, when we both get spotted, we're at, you know, 200 meters, not 400 meters. And that's sort of something that people need to practice when playing a lot of these super heavies, is this idea that's different from in the late game than playing these faster tanks. In the faster tanks, you want to play keep away. In the slower tanks, you want to play, okay, I'm just around the corner, sort of thing. But otherwise, I think you did pretty well. I think you need a lot of those early shots you needed APCR for, but a lot of those later shots you really need the APCR for. But that's not that big of a deal. If that's the way you roll, that's the way you roll. And I'm good with that. All right, but of close Firefox. Alrighty, and then next we'll look at Penniago's T54 lightweight and hope for not too much crappy medium play. Did it get muted again? I probably wasn't saying anything that interesting. Yeah, I know it's fine now. Like I tend to monitor it when I'm switching windows because that's when it dies for whatever reason. I'm not entirely sure why. But so I generally monitor it when I start a replay and when I close a replay because that's when it tends to cut out. Let's pretend like I said something very clever. Alright. Yeah, there we go. So, light tank, top tier, roughly the same comms. I still like spotting down through here. I think that's potentially useful. They don't really have a lot of speed tanks to counter you, so that's good. You do only have really a Type 59 though. You'll see a lot of light tanks spot through this area here, which is potentially useful if you have good artillery, but not usually that big of a deal. I generally think that it's more important to move down here if you can. But a lot of this is you gotta see what your team is doing. And it's really important as a light tank to look and see, you know, what's my team actually doing here, because that's going to influence profoundly how you end up playing. So the Type 59 is coming down in this direction eventually. Otherwise, you don't have a whole lot. Looks like the T-30 is coming down here. The STI might still be loading in, or AFK. Most of your guys are going over towards the town. These guys over here are not going to be very effective. So you're taking this tact where that I don't really like, which is going around to this side here. Again, so when we talk about intel and understanding what the enemy team is doing, you kind of want to get an idea of where the enemy team is going. Whenever you're in a light tank, think of it like it doesn't have very good armor, it doesn't have a lot of health, it doesn't have a really powerful gun. So if you run around the corner and you run into Mike Tyson's going to knock your ass out, right? You're not fit to brawl with Mike Tyson. So what you want to do is you want to be able to spot these guys far away, right? Use your camo, use your speed. So one of the things that's really easy to do is to run this rail. You can light down all the way through this area and then basically just peel off there if you see anything, and if you don't, then you can basically just kind of hang out there. Taking the tack that you're at, that you're taking right now, they can roll all the way up here. You still don't know. You still don't know where any of their team is at. You still don't know. You still won't know until right now. Now you know. And then now it's okay. You gotta go. So they're willing to push in here, and you just gotta leave. Just gotta leave. You've already lost it. You haven't prevented them from moving forward, so this side is now lost. So it's just a matter of going through the other way and making sure that you can win on that other side. Again, you don't want to hang out here because it's very easy to get RD'd. You need to run. So again, you know, what I've always said about this side is that if you can't control this ditch, you might as well leave. Your team is not going to control this ditch, so you gotta leave. The longer that you guys sit here, the more that you're just going to get whittled down, unless these guys do something extremely stupid, like basically sit up there and allow your arty to pick them off. Right? These guys are always going to win this. They have superior position on this side, and that's the problem. If you don't own this, right, then you gotta leave. You've already given it up. Like this side has already been forfeited. And they've got that bulldog floating in that middle, but I don't want to worry too much about that. You can now come around over here, and what you basically want to do, you don't want to snipe from back here. It's not going to really be super useful. You want to start probing over on this side. Let's see where this LTTB is at. And then you want to be careful if you play through the swamp. Like you're playing a little bit too far back now. Don't worry about those guys over there. You got to try to win someplace. So again, as we said, you've already lost down here. Although man, you're already, or no, the Scorpion do just take that guy out. That E75 is actually technically vulnerable, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. They're going to have a lot of guys back there, which is why actually playing through underneath here now would be better than where you're at. Turret! Turret! Side turret. You're shooting hull or side turret? Hull? Side turret. Hull? Side turret. Shoot that side turret. He's looking that way. You've got a pretty decent chance to pen. Deep sigh. Oh man. Okay, and so you don't want to sit in this position where you're at. So again, you're going to lose this side eventually. You want to be able to clear this guy out before these guys become relevant. Because if you can clear this guy out, then you can get up underneath them far enough away that these guys aren't going to be a problem. And then you can allow your team to have an opportunity to potentially do something. Oh yeah, at least you had a chance to redeem yourself on that side turret. And then so you basically just want to, so you'll see a lot of people fight from this area right there, fight from this area right there. That's fine. You've already lost this side. Just let them have this side. If your artillery was smart, they would have already been out, which allows you to fire back at the cap pretty easily. So you're not going to really save these guys over here, or not save is the right. You're not really going to be helping these guys over here by heading out over here. What you actually need to do is you need to actually start heading down here. So you need to start getting down into this area here where you can start moving through here, and if they push up through there, you can potentially get to the back to Artie. If they don't, then you can potentially move up here once these guys win and spot these guys to get shot. But where you're going right now is a mystery to us all. So you'll see this a lot from players when they don't know what to do. They'll go, oh, let's just go where everybody else is. But particularly in light tanks. Light tanks are highly specialized tanks. Again, let's go over it. You have less health than everybody else. You have less armor than everybody else. You have a worse gun than everybody else. So what advantages do you have, right? If you have none of those things, then you don't want to have to try to say, okay, well, you know what I should do? I should try to use my gun as much as possible. Oh, you know what I should do? I should throw my body in front of shots as much as possible. No. You've got less health than everyone else. You have less armor than everyone else. You have a worse gun than everyone else. So, play to your advantages, which is to come through here, use your ability to flank and to spot and to not be seen. Coming over here to help these guys, not doing your team a damn lick of good. If these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tier 8 and tier 9 guys cannot get one single one shot IS-6 down, you've already lost this game, right? You're just wasting time at this point. To do what? To come over here, hey guys, what's up? You guys want to go Starbucks? No. That's not useful. So again, where you're going, you're not a heavy tank. You're not a medium tank. You shouldn't be leading this edge. That doesn't really help you. You did prevent that 704 from getting a shot though, so there is that. So now at this point, technically, if you wanted, you could push up underneath them. But again, the STI is already like, don't worry, light tank, I'll do it for you. So you can provide some, again, at this point, you can run up under here. Your STI is already coming to this side. There's no reason for you to spot something that he's already going to do. The STI is like, seriously, bro, I could have done that for you. So again, the reason why you want to play through here, you can't do it right this instant because you're still lit and these guys can shoot you from over here. But the reason why you want to play through here is because you can literally just sneak in and get to the back if you want. If you can't, then you can still sneak in and get some shots on these guys over here. Like if you really wanted to, you could probably sneak all the way over here to get shots back at these guys. What you're doing is like, oh, I'm going to front. I'm going to use my superior armor, my superior health, and my superior gun to put the fear of God into these tank destroyers. And these tank destroyers, they're not scared of you. They're just not scared of you. And why should they be? You've got a worse gun. You've got less armor. You've got less health. You've got no advantages against them right there. Play to your strength. Your strength is not duking it out with tanks with more armor than you, with more health than you, with better guns than you. That is not your strength. So you're kind of playing through where theoretically it would be good to play through. You're playing a little bit high here. I don't understand. Like even if you were a medium tank, this isn't a good play. Oh my god, the AFK light tank is going to own your entire team. And again, so playing in this particular position is potentially dangerous because it's not really going to be super safe. You're actually safer coming in through over here. And what you want to be able to do is take out their artillery because their artillery is punishing your guys. So target selection, my man. I mean, the T-28 Proto is nice, but I mean, there's literally a one-shot guy right here with his ass to you. And you've got a limited window here. No, there's still a one-shot guy. 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 There's still... Oh, you got him. Okay, and then now what you want to do is you want to get the hell out of dodge, right? You want to get out of this position that you're in right now because this is not a very good position. Luckily, they still haven't pushed over here. And again, the light tank is going to own you here, so you got to be a little careful. But this is at least a reasonable play. Don't stop. Don't stop. Don't stop. No, don't stop. Don't block your army. You need to get the hell out of dodge. No, you need to get the hell out of dodge. You've already lost your opportunity to kill this guy. Get the hell out of dodge, my man. Lol. And fix your driver. Excellent. Okay. And then now, what do you want to do? How do you play this as a light tank in the late game? As we've said many times. You play the distance game. You have the advantage of distance. They're not going to be able to cap if you do not allow them to cap. The 4004, the convoy might be back here still, so you do need to be a little bit careful. You basically want to allow them to get on cap if that's what they want to do, because that's where you're going to have your biggest advantage. You don't want to drive through the cap because you don't want to tell them where you're at. You could technically outduel the convoy if you're at a close enough distance. Well, the convoy's on the other side, even better. JT still might be a problem. But if you can establish where the JT is at, then you're money. He's not going to be back there anymore. So again, you're just doing a little bit of light scouting here. You want to be careful crossing this bridge right here. Yeah, you'd rather go down. And then peek up. And go down. And then you can actually even run this ridge a little bit here, because their JT, if he's going to come around, he's going to be in that area right there. Okay, so he's already over there. So you can push here. You still have all the advantages here if you want. You just need to take out the arty. And then just loop up this way so you can see. Again, so whenever you're trying to find somebody, whenever you're looking for somebody, you don't want to be in valleys. Valleys don't help you find people. There's very limited spotting that you can do from inside a valley. You want to run ridges. You want to surf. That's how you find people. So play up here. Don't play down here. Play up here. Up, 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 up. You need to know. You need to know. You want to know. You don't know. So he knows that he's lit. And so they're likely coming back towards him. So you got to make this quick if you do this. And again, you don't want to proxy him. You want to be far away from him. And then you want to run. Just run, get the hell out of Dodge. Just run. Just run. 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 Just keep running. Just keep running. Keep running, my man. And then now, you want to play the ditch. And then you can come up. As soon as he drops spot, just come up to light him and then drop down. Come up. Come up. You need to know. You need to know. You gotta know. It's important to know. You want to know. You can get a shot at him under the tracks if you want. Again, you want to keep an eye. You need to know. You need to know where the other guy is as well. So you want to run the ridge. Gotta practice getting intel. Intel is important as a light tank. Intel is the difference between winning and losing. You don't want to make this into a boxing match. This is not a brawl game for you. You need to keep your distance. You need to keep your distance and get shots on him on the way in. He's already established that he cannot spot you outside of 400 meters. You know this. You're just letting him get close. And for what? So you could be sitting right here, literally just sitting on the tracks, shooting this guy for free. You don't even need to go any further than where you're at right now. He's already established that he can't see you at that distance. You need to know. You need to light him. Oh, do it. What are you doing? No, he's going back. So what you do not want to do is you do not want to close the gap. The gap you want to be far. Unfortunately, now you have zero intel. And again, you always have to think about this with light tanks. And this is why people playing light tanks always frustrate me. It's because they don't care where the enemy is at. Like, for some reason, they just don't seem to care where the enemy is at. And that's the biggest concern you should ever have in any light tank is, what's the enemy doing? Why? Why is that the biggest concern? Because that is what you are best at doing. That is what you are best at doing. You have all the advantages. You have all the camo. You have all the mobility. And then you get closer. Why are you getting closer to this guy? You don't need to be this close. This should be an easy win. This should be an easy win. Guys on cap at a distance. There's no reason. Again, use the advantages of your tank. Let's go over this again. You have less armor than everyone else. You have less health than everyone else. You have a worse gun than everyone else. None of those things are your advantages. What's your advantage? You have better camo than any of these guys, whether you're moving or not. because of you're using a smaller caliber gun, you're also going to cut into your own camo less when you fire at these guys. But these guys likely don't have the view range to spot you. So all you got to do is play a vision game. There's zero reason why you should lose a game like this. Anybody who sits on cap like that deserves to lose against a light tank. So technically you're playing it right because you're going back and you're getting your distance, and that's all you need to do. All you need to do is just barely close enough to spot him, then scroll back a little bit and then shoot him in the face. So what you do not want to do is close the gap. You don't need to be any closer. You do not need to be any closer to these guys. As soon as this circle is over there, this guy does not have enough camo to stop you from spotting him. You do not need to allow him to use this building. You're not even allowing him to use the building. You are giving him the benefit of the building by sitting behind the building. This is what frustrates me about light tank users. You understand the strength of your tank. The strength of your tank is that you literally can sit out in the open, in the absolute open against this guy, and he can't spot you, and you can spot him. You don't need to sneak up on him. You can literally drive through an open area, well lit. There could be spotlights above shining down on your tank, and he cannot spot you because you are in a light tank. Use the strengths of your tank. You don't need to be close. You need to be far. You need to be at the furthest distance you can possibly be, because that is where you're at advantage. The closer and closer and closer that you creep to him, the less and less and less an advantage. And this is completely 100% self-inflicted. You're allowing this building to own you. This building, this inanimate object, this object that can be destroyed in this game, is owning you because you are allowing it to own you. If you are just sitting out in the open, just dead in the open here, you can shoot this guy for free. But you're like, oh man, this building is blocking me. I gotta get closer. No, you don't need to get closer. There's never any reason to get closer. Take that shot. And then see, he's moving towards you. So you need to get the hell out. And this is why you never want to play close. You want to play far. Because if he moves towards you, all you got to do is just move a little bit further back. You can be, again, in the absolute 100% wide open. So he's charging you now. And see, now he's too close. Oh, run, my man, run. So again, what is it that you're looking to try to do here? What is it that you're looking to try to do? You are looking to try to keep some distance. He's going to try to close the gap, and you're trying to expand the gap. As long as you have intel about where he's at, all you got to do is just right-click on him once, right? Keep him lit. Press left-click every so often as you're running away. What you don't want to do is you don't want to allow him to close that gap. You're faster than him. You shouldn't allow him to be able to catch up to you. You keep taking these oblique angles which allow him to further close said gap. And now it looks like you're going to try to brawl, which maybe you're not going to try to brawl. Technically, you could have brawled him if before the JT shot you, but now that you're one shot, you really just can't. So I'm not entirely sure why you went this way, because he was pursuing you. So whenever somebody's pursuing you in a light tank, you want that. That's good. That's almost as good as them just kind of hanging out on cap. Almost as good as them just hanging out on cap. Because if they're pursuing you, you can still control the distance, because you're faster than them. What are your strengths? Let's go over your strengths one more time, just so we're absolutely clear on this. Your strength is that you have better camo than everybody, that you have better vision range than everybody. So how do you use camo and vision range? By controlling the distance between you and the enemy, so that you can see them, but they can't see you. That's what light tanks are good at. And so if somebody's trying to pursue you, hell, let them. You can try all you want. If you've got strong frontal armor, I might not damage you, but you're never gonna see me. right? Especially on an open map. You've got no chance. Oh. So anyways, I know I've been a little bit excited about this, but this is sort of counter to the previous match where we talk about playing to the strengths of your tank. When you're in a heavy tank, you don't want to be running around open areas with large swaths of space between you and the enemy. And it's the exact opposite. When you're in the faster tank, you want that space, you want that gap, you want to see them coming across these big open areas so that you can get your free shots on them. And particularly in light tanks, and again, let's make this perfectly clear, that you retain your camouflage on the move. That is the strength, that is the feature of light tanks that you do not get with any other tank. So, depending on how good your crew is, we're talking about 20 to 30% reduction in your opponent's view range, which is a hugely significant amount, right? Until you fire, of course. But you still retain a lot of camo. So you need to be able to use that. And so that is really the strength of the light tank, which is why it always frustrates me when light tanks think that their gun is what's good about the tank. It's not. The gun is not good. Your gun is literally worse than any other equal tier tank that's not also another light tank, right? Your gun is just worse than them. They're purposefully designed to be worse. Why? Because if they were stronger, then the fact that they had camo on the move would make light tanks completely overpowered, and there would be no reason for anybody to play anything except for light tanks. Which is why, when we talk about the balance of light tanks, when they go to tier 10, I don't think that the balance is going to be by, hey, let's give them guns that are equivalent to the tier 10 mediums. Because if they did, there would be no reason for anybody to ever play mediums. Because on every single open map, a light tank player who knew how to play a light tank would just completely dominate, because nobody would be able to see them, and he would have as good of a gun as everyone else. So I don't think that that's the way that the balance is going to go. But when we talk about the strengths of the light tanks, that's really what we're talking about. That ability to say, hey, I can see you, but you can't see me, and there's nothing that you can do about it. There's nothing to stop me from abusing that view range mechanic, because you can't ever catch up to me. Particularly on more open maps like this, you can't ever catch up to me. If you want to get to where I'm at, I'm going to eventually force you to cross a big open area, and I'm going to get damaged, or my team is going to get damaged. And that is how you want to play these types of tanks. So when we break down what actually happened in this match, right? So you came down here, which is fine. I don't think that was bad. I think that you want to run this ridge because you need to know. You need to have some sort of intel about what they're sending there. But you figured it out eventually, and they didn't push you too aggressively. If they pushed you aggressively, they potentially could have caught you there. But you came up to this bush instead. You saw that there were 2 FCMs were coming in, and that's fine, right? Get the hell out of Dodge. And you were able to before they were able to deal damage. And as I've said many times, once whoever owns this has won this side, and you might as well just sacrifice the rest of it and just get out with as minimal casualties as possible. If you're not willing to push into this area, then you're eventually going to lose on this side, which is eventually what happened. Right? You had a bunch of guys in the back, particularly you had a couple of tier 9s in the back, but that doesn't necessarily help you in that particular case. You had a bunch of guys there, and then you kind of played in this middle area here, which it's okay in that sort of early mid part of that game, because your team hadn't quite made any progress through this this west side over here yet. But once your team started moving through that side right there, it would have been much more profitable for you to come down through here, right? And then you could have done one of two things. If these guys were in a position where your team could have shot them either with their artillery or with direct fire, then you can come around and light these guys and provoke them right there. But otherwise, you can come in through here and potentially get at artillery, which would have been useful for your team, particularly for your heavies as they were trying to push out through there. So you want to, whenever you're in a light tank, you need to look for those opportunities. In every single game that's not organized play, and even a lot of games where there's organized play, as teams flex around, they leave what are called vision gaps, which are holes in the defense that you can literally just drive through, but you need to probe them and see whether they have vision gaps. Their team had a very obvious vision gap through this area right here, because your LTTB was just kind of hanging out over here. Like, he wasn't doing anything useful, but he was just hanging out over there. And so you could have potentially pushed in through down here. I mean, the LTTP could have done it, but you could have done it as well, and come around through here and at least figured out what was on the back line, if anything, and or gotten after the artillery, and that would have made things much much more difficult to them. And then at the late game, you did chase down that artillery, which is fine. Again, I think whenever you're looking for people, especially in a light tank, you want to surf ridges. You want to be on hills, and then if you happen to get lit, then you can just roll off the side of the hill. Like, you want to be looking. And again, it goes back to the strengths of the tank. Most tanks, you're going to be able to spot before they're going to be able to see you. So that's always to your advantage. So do some surfing. And so one of the things that I do want to go over is, so how do you play this against somebody who's chasing after you in a light tank? How do you actually play it? So a couple of things. So we've established that this Conway can't spot you at probably about 400 meters, right? So either he doesn't have optics or your camo is decent enough that that's not a problem. But he can spot you from, 350-ish. So all you need to do is basically, you can spot him from max view range. There's just, he's not going to have enough camo for you to not be able to spot him. Presumably you're running optics on the tank, and as long as you have a halfway decent crew, you're going to be able to spot him. As soon as he enters the blue line, you're going to be able to spot him. So what you want to be able to do is basically kite. And if you've ever played, World of Warcraft, or there's a lot of games where people will actually kite, then it's basically that, which is basically you drag them across open areas. They typically tend to follow you in relatively straight lines. You drag them across open areas, and you get free shots on them as they come across those open areas. You keep them at pretty much a maximum view range. Pretty much, if he was outside of 400 meters, it's hard to say for sure without knowing like what his tank setup was, but within outside of 400 meters, you probably could have fired without him even spotting you. But definitely just driving, if you kept him in that buffer. So all you want to do is keep him in that sweet spot, kite him along, and just shoot him as you get opportunities to. And a lot of times, like if you see me play and I'm kiting somebody, I won't even aim at them. I'll right click on them, I'll auto aim, and I'll drive, right? And I'll just drive, and I'll just kind of watch the mini map where I go, oh yeah, I think I got a shot now. I'll left click, right? That's all you really need to do, like depending on how much pressure you're under, like if there's other tanks that you need to be worried about and things like that. But especially when it's 1v1 or 1v2, when they're both on the cap, like you should absolutely just dominate those situations. Like against once they put two guys on cap on an open map like this, like their game should be over. Like it's like, yeah, thanks for playing, guys. I'm just gonna go ahead and collect my win now. Like that's what upsets me, is that people still don't get that distance play with light tanks or even with medium tanks, and how important it is to play against blind, when you're playing against blind tanks, and not necessarily, especially tank destroyers, but even against slower heavies and things like that. Learn how to practice how to keep your distance, and understand that you being close to that bush doesn't nearly help you as much if you're so close to these guys that you can't actually fire at them, right? Sitting out in the open is incredibly underrated as a light tank, and people don't do it nearly enough, because again, you get 100% of your camo, 100% of your camo when you're moving. So you can just move around this fringe in this open area here, right? And as long as you keep them at that 400 meter range, they're not going to be able to spot you. Right? And it doesn't matter whether you have a bush to help you or not. They're just not going to be able to do it. And that is the strength of the light tank. And that is how you got to play it. That's why light tank can be incredibly important on these types of open maps where you make it to the late game and everybody else is blind, right? That's where you have your advantages. And that's where you can just completely wreck people. And I'm sorry if I seemed frustrated with you. Well, I certainly was frustrated. I am not like mad at you, Penniago. I'm not like, you're a bad person. It's just when we talk about the sort of principles of playing the different classes, and what I've always said with any of them is you always want to play to your strengths, and it's important to be able to sort of mentally identify what those are while you're playing, and be like, okay, well, I got this guy if I can keep him at X distance, right? If I can keep him at X distance, then there's nothing that he can do to touch me. And that should be like your goal. And it's the same thing on the opposite end. Like if you're that Conway and you're playing against that light tank, you're sitting there thinking, oh man, how do I cut this guy off where we can spot each other at 200 meters or some close enough range where I can engage him, right? And if you're a medium tank in this situation, you're like, oh, I can basically spot the same range as a light tank. So as long as he's not firing at me, then he can outspot me. But the instant that he fires, I can close that gap, because I'm not, depending on the medium tank you're in, you're generally not quite that slow. And if you're in a heavy, right, against a light tank, you're like, okay, well, I hope he comes around this corner at the end of the day, or I hope that he comes into this gap right away. Right? Whenever you're in the faster tank, you typically have the luxury, especially when it gets into this late game where there's more room, you typically have this luxury where you get to dictate, okay, we're going to fight now, right? So you always get to dictate, this is what the terms of the fight are going to be. And if I don't like the terms of this fight, I'm just going to go someplace else, right? Until I see something that I like. And there's some maps that you can't do that on. Like if this was, like, let's say Himmelsdorf, it's not like you can kite these guys around Himmelsdorf for the most part. But on this map in particular, and a lot of maps are like this, where you do have that opportunity. And you'll see it a lot in particular in those when the cap areas are easily defendable, like on maps like this, where they're basically out in these open areas. Don't be afraid to use the camo of the light tank to your advantage. And again, all you need to do is be at max range. Here, let me pull this down just to sort of put a on this. So all you have to do is like let's say those guys were on the cap. All you have to do is let's say that they have excellent view range. Let's say that all of these guys were running optics with maximum cruise, right? So they also have maximum view range. Your camel's still going to cut into you, but the instant that you fire, right, you lose that camo. So they're going to be able to spot you if you fire. So all you really have to do, this is especially easy when they're stationary on areas like open caps. All you have to do is just put them just inside the bubble to light them, and then back up 5 meters so they're outside the bubble, and then shoot them, right? Because you can fire at anything, and if anything is outside of the blue line, right, they cannot spot you. Even if they are literally 1 meter outside the blue line, they cannot spot you. So all you got to do is drive forward 1 meter, shoot them. I'm sorry, drive forward 1 meter, spot them. Drive back 1 meter, shoot them. Drive forward 1 meter, spot them. Drive back 1 meter, shoot them. Right? And they have no recourse. And that's if they have maximum view range. So like if it was a medium on there with maximum view range, like a Patton or something like that, he's just sitting there, you can still do that exact same thing in the absolute open. You don't need bushes, you don't need anything, right? And there's nothing that he can do about that. And that learning how to play like in this area, that 400 to 450 meter area, that's the butter zone for light tanks, and to a lesser extent medium tanks as well, because you will get a lot of opportunities for free damage in those types of situations. All right, so if we look at the stats, I think your team did okay for losing that south early. You need to sort of acknowledge that loss. Teams will always bleed out defending that cap, despite the fact that the cap is actually rather easy to defend. Like if your artillery had gotten out, either of them, that would have made your life so much easier, because you guys still would have controlled the northwest, and it would have been very, very easy between a light tank and an artillery to basically clean up the cap, because there's no way for them to come across that field without potentially getting owned there. But again, most artillery are not very good at actually positioning, which is a sort of a fatal flaw. But you did pretty well on the damages, so that's good. You did drive a rather significant distance, 11 kilometers, so you got that going for you. Uh, I'm sorry, man. It's GG though. I mean, I feel like you had the right idea. You just had the wrong execution of that idea. And I hope that we were able to clear that up at least a little bit. No, and again, one of the things I want to say is that I hope you guys. I mean, I get excited. I mean, I like doing the replays. Um, I am occasionally excitable during them, but I don't want you guys to feel bad about it. Like that's not what we're getting at. What we're getting at is I'm really trying to emphasize that these are the reasons why you do what you do, and understanding. Okay, in this particular situation, I wasn't playing to the strength of the tank, or I was playing to the strength of the tank. I think that's important because when you're in that same situation next time, you're going to think about that. You're going to think that, oh, okay, I'm in a light tank and I'm up against some blind ass tanks, some tanks that don't deserve to be on the same field as me. And then that's, whenever you play these open maps, that's where the light tanks are really fun. In a sense, because you can do things that you just can't in other tanks. You can't do that even in medium tanks, just because they don't retain the same level of camo on the move. So whenever you're trying to outposition somebody, you're not necessarily going to outspot them, because if they're near a bush or whatever, they can potentially spot you. But that's not the case for light tanks, because it's like, hey, I carry my camo around with me, so this is just how I roll. And that's why I'm I was talking earlier about the balance of tier 10 tanks, and that's what I think will end up being interesting to see, is what happens from in that type of situation. How do they balance the tier 10 lights for those end game situations? Are they overpowered, or do people just play them essentially how they play light tanks now?